La diffusion vient de démarrer. Tous les participants sont en mode écoute seul.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this second dissemination webinar organized by the EPATEE Consortium. My name is Dario Di Santo. I work for FIRE, the Italian Federation for the Rational Use of Energy, and I will introduce you the project. After that, we will go through our EPATEE Toolbox with Paul van der Osterkamp from ECN TNO. And I hope that you will find this tool interesting and useful for your activities. So first of all, let me introduce the main scope of our project, which is to create a favorable condition for improving number, quality, and effective use of ex-post impact evaluation. So we dedicate especially to the impact evaluation of energy efficiency policy. It is a project which relies on the involvement of key stakeholders, and the idea is that by improving evaluation practices, we can lead to a better understanding and knowledge of the impacts of the policies, and so facilitate the path toward the 2030 horizon, and especially linked with Article 7 of the Energy Efficiency Directive, but not only to that. We produced a knowledge base by including in it a lot of papers, articles, reports relating to the evaluation of energy policies, and we also prepare a set of case studies evaluating the main policies all around Europe and also outside the European borders, with the aim of sharing with the stakeholders best practices and in general all experiences that can help to build knowledge and capacity with respect to the evaluation of energy efficiency policies. And in particular, we produced three main actions. One is the online toolbox, and we will discuss about it today. The other one is experience sharing actions like peer learning workshops, both at EU and national levels, webinars, and so on, and dissemination of results. In practice, today's webinar is part of this dissemination action, but we are using it also to get feedback on our toolbox. We started the project with interviews with the key stakeholders all around Europe, so to better understand their priorities and their needs, and so also to direct our actions. We produce already 2 surveys on evaluation practices, and we started a third one, which is directly linked with a toolbox to improve it. We organized already 3 peer learning workshops in Paris, in Vienna, and in Roma. The next one will be in Brussels in June. And we are starting with national peer learning workshop. We organize webinars, especially apart from these dissemination webinars, also experience sharing webinars, going directly into some interesting topics related with policy evaluation. And we also provide direct support. So what you can do is to subscribe to our newsletter, to get in touch with us, to remain updated on our actions, and also to be able to join our events. You can provide feedbacks on all our actions, and you can ask for direct support if needed. Just some reminders: you can find all the proceedings of our events, so both the webinars and the workshop, on our website in the event sectors. So you can find webinars, workshop, and other presentations linked with dissemination on our activities. And you can find reports and tools in the results tab. So there is the knowledge base, the case studies, the toolbox, and the reports about what we have done over these months of EPATEE projects. Today, as anticipated, we will show you how the EPATEE Toolbox works, and so how you can get advantage from using it. You can feel free to ask all the questions you need to understand how it works and also how it can be improved. All your suggestions will be really appreciated, and theoretically you can also fill in the survey on the toolbox later on. And I will also tell you that there are two coming events. The first one is the second National EPATEE Peer Learning Workshop in Berlin on May 22. And the other one is the fourth and last European Peer Learning Workshop, which will take place in Brussels in June 13th. So that's enough from my side. You can find information on the project on our website. You can follow us also on our Twitter account and subscribe to our newsletter. Here you can find represented the partners of the project. The coordinator is the Austrian Energy Audit Agency, and in particular Gregor Tenius. So you can contact him if you have any question about the project, and I'm in charge with the stakeholder engagement, so feel free to contact me if you need some information about this, and in particular feel free to contact Paul van der Oosterkamp if you need information about the EPATEE Toolbox. So I just remind you before giving the floor to Paul that you can use the chat or the question tabs in your control panel. Go to webinar to ask questions to the speakers, and so please do it whenever you need it or you feel to do it. Now I'm going to give the floor to Paul, and thank you very much for your attention, and see you soon in our over actions and events. Please, Paul, the floor is.
Thank you, Dario, for this introduction. Good morning, everybody joining the webinar. I will go and show you something on the toolbox developed in our project. First of all, I will share my screen with you. So in this webinar, I will show you what we can learn from the EPATEE Toolbox for ex-post evaluation of energy efficiency. I hope you can all see my slides.
Yes, that's fine, Paul. We see your slides, no problem.
Okay. The aim of the toolbox is to give general guidance on ex-post evaluation for energy efficiency. We do this by providing a big knowledge base for relevant references, and we also do this by providing advanced guidance on very specific combinations of policy measures, sectors, and calculation methods. We indicate those with the framework PSMC, the abbreviation of PSMC. In the toolbox, we will do this by guiding users through different menus, as I will show you later, or by an interactive selection of different mechanisms through a wizard. The guidelines and tools that we have included in the toolbox are based on a general template to make sure that the description of the tools has some resemblance, shows some cohesion and coherence. We have made, or we are preparing, it's still work in progress. The whole toolbox will be finalized by approximately 1st of June. Currently, we have about 10 PSMCs in the toolbox, and the aim is to increase that by about 30. And these descriptions will give a guidance how an evaluation can be executed, given the needs and possibilities for the specific combination. It also includes references to the knowledge base. So in the description of the tools, we provide links to documents in the knowledge base, but we also provide references to more general guidance in the toolbox. Secondly, we have also made a number of general notes in the project, which is also added information in the description of the tools. So the toolbox combines the earlier developed knowledge base. The knowledge base was developed by Fraunhofer in Germany, and we have added the knowledge base in the toolbox. So on the left you see the toolbox, which is composed of 3 different sections. We can give general guidance on energy efficiency and energy efficiency evaluation. We can also give very advanced guidance based on very specific combinations of methods, sectors, and policy measures. And we have a guidance, we have a link to the knowledge base where people can find references in their area of interest. So the toolbox aims to integrate the different sources of information, the knowledge base, the different notes we provided in the project, and to basically condense that in the description of the general guides, the PSMCs. Examples of the internal notes we developed in the project is, for example, the main policy measures types that do exist, and how do we make the selection for the PSMC. The definition of the different sectors to be considered in the analysis of energy efficiency evaluation, because there are about 8 different sectors you can think about. And for example, in the residential sector, you may go to quite different policy measures or calculation method than in the industry sector or in the transport sector. So the method of saving calculation has also great attendance and is also represented in the toolbox. And finally, the analysis of what combinations are applicable to certain situations is also included in the toolbox. So this is another way of representing the scope of and the organization of the toolbox. So on the left-hand side, you see a number of elements that are important to consider. For example, the user characteristics. Is the user a policymaker? Is the user an obliged party to achieve some energy savings in the future? The situation of the evaluation, is it a new policy or is it an existing policy? The policy type and sector, of course, is relevant. Then the kind of results that are expected from the evaluation is important. Is the user interested to express his savings in primary energy or in final energy, for example? and there may be all kinds of restrictions present. A restriction may be a limited budget to execute the evaluation, the time available to do the evaluation, etc. This will all go into the advice on the methodology and how it will be applied. And that will be illustrated with, on the right-hand side, example cases we have developed in the project and also as part of the toolbox, a number of case studies that have been produced by the partners in the project and a number of deepening case studies, so where we analyze on a somewhat deeper level the evaluation methods. We have also included a number of topics to delve into, for example, the selection of baselines or reference level to measure energy savings. And we also applied, of course, the existing, or we make reference to existing general guidance on evaluations, general methods, for example, ISO standards or IPMPV or ESD. So in the toolbox, we will ultimately, I've said it's still work in progress. We have now produced about 10 PSMCs and ultimately we will produce a number of 30 PSMCs. Here you see the selected list of PSMCs, not for you to read them all, but to integrate, to emphasize an important element. Because if you look at the overall scope of energy evaluation and you look at the different methods, you can distinguish about 10 different methods to calculate energy efficiency. There are about 8 relevant sectors to consider energy efficiency. And we can also distinguish something like 7 different policy measures. So a simple multiplication of those methods, sectors and policy measures gives a total of 560 theoretical combinations. Of course, a lot of those combinations will not be practical or relevant. So what we did, we made a more detailed analysis of this total scope, and we selected the most relevant 30 combinations listed on this page, for we think that covers approximately 90% of the evaluation situations in practice. So it's not only a tool that provides detailed guidance for a specific situation, it also includes already a kind of extracting the most relevant combinations in practice. So in the toolbox, which I will demonstrate in a moment, we find a number of different sections. Some of them have still to be filled up with information, but this will be the ultimate scope of the toolbox. We have general principles about evaluation, about definitions and typologies, about evaluating impacts other than energy savings. For example, there can also be influence on job creation or environmental by-effects. The process of evaluation, how to plan and prepare an evaluation, how to integrate it in the policy cycle, an overview of the different evaluation methods, and a guidance per type of evaluation methods, and for example, how to choose a method or baseline in combination with the specific situation. And finally, also some cross-cutting issues, like evaluating net energy savings or linking with monitoring and verification or data collection, which is also, of course, an important element. So this is then the final general organization of the online toolbox. We have divided that in 3 different sections that you see here with 3 different colors. On the left-hand side, the more general scope of evaluation principles and methods. On the right-hand side, the knowledge base and the case studies, and in the middle, the green area, the specific evaluation guidance, so the focus on the earlier meant PSMCs. Apart from, let's say, the selection, the division in these 3 different segments, we also developed a more by the hand wizard method, which I also will demonstrate in a moment, to give users different possibilities to delve into the material of the toolbox. Okay, I will now try to go to the toolbox. One moment. Yes. Here we are. So this is the EPATEE online toolbox when you go to the website indicated here. And again, you see the evaluation principles and methods, the blue section, the specific evaluation guidance, and the knowledge base. So let's first go to the left section, the blue section, evaluation principles and methods. And we see here a number of different categories: general principles, the process of evaluation, cross-cutting issues, and deepening case studies. A number of those boxes contains links, which I will show at the moment. And also a number of boxes is still information which will be filled in the next few months. As I said earlier, the aim is to finalize the toolbox around June 1st. So in the general principles of evaluation, you can, for example, delve into evaluation. What is exactly evaluation? And you can go to the different definitions that we can find in the literature or on the internet. We can go to different sources that are relevant. For example, from the European Commission, we have the Better Regulation Toolbox. We can also go to other standard references like the UK Magenta book, which is also a central government guidance on evaluation and summarizing of best practices. So it gives a whole wealth of information on users that wants to know more about evaluation in general. So this is not only about energy efficiency evaluation, but a lot of this information is also on the process of evaluation and on the combination of different methods and on the analysis of the best available methods for particular situations. Another section that we find here is on definitions and typologies, which are relevant to evaluation of energy savings. And if you go there, you find a PDF document which shows a table of contents where you can find everything you want to know about, for example, primary energy savings or final energy savings, on definitions of energy savings metrics, about absolute savings, about year-to-year energy savings, on top-down methods, on bottom-up methods, on other effects that are important, for example, the rebound effect, on the typology of policy instruments, on the typology of sectors, on the typology of different calculation methods. So for users that are not so familiar with energy efficiency methods, oh. For users that are not so familiar with energy evaluation, they can find a wealth of information here. We also have a number of deepening case studies. The scope of this seminar the timing is not enough to go into a lot of detail here, but in this section you will find the scope of the topical case studies that have been developed in the EPATEE project. This is about evaluating net energy savings. It gives a summary, and then you can also go to the full PDF document. So that's about the general section about evaluation principles and methods. On the right-hand section, the orange section, we have the knowledge base and the case studies. So let's first look at the case studies. You see here a number of about 25 case studies developed in the EPATEE project for a number of different subjects, a number of different regions, a number of different policy measures, a number of different calculation methods. And you can find the document by looking or by accessing the relevant title. For example, this one is the Italian white certificate schemes. In Italy, this instrument, this policy measure has been applied quite extensively. So what we did, the Italian partners in the project have developed this case study also along a predefined template format. So all the case studies have a similar format. And these case studies have also been cross-reviewed by other EPATEE partners. So we have executed, we have applied some strict quality control on this case study. So it summarizes the policy instrument, the sector, the general information. It summarizes the expected energy savings. It summarizes the kind of benchmark. It goes into the output of the study. It gives some graphical information. It also summarizes the sources of uncertainties that are included. It delves into the calculation method applied. So for users that are not so sure about which method, are contemplating what kind of evaluation they should apply, this base of case studies gives them also a kind of reference point where they can make up their mind and look at maybe similar policy measures or calculation methods that they also think about. Then another important element is, of course, the library of the knowledge base. This was developed by Fraunhofer, and here a large number of references of, let's say, the last 2 decades are put together. So this is a very good source of information where you want to delve into or look into maybe a specific study type that you're interested in, an evaluation report or an evaluation paper or a methodology paper. It's also possible to look at a particular policy instrument. Maybe you are interested in a financial instrument or market-based instrument like an obligation, or a cooperative instrument like a voluntary agreement. Here you can also select the different sectors that an evaluator is maybe considering. The references are also linked, ranked according to the geographical scope. So a user in Austria might look for original articles in Austria. And finally, there is even a possibility to select the language. And if you are interested in a more advanced search, there are more buttons to push, because this can also go into the detail of the, for example, the evaluation, the calculation method. For example, the kind of reference to be, or baseline to be used, or the kind of other normalization factors that may or may not be included. So let me just give one example. We want to have an evaluation paper. We want to have a fiscal instrument. We want to look in the industry, and let's look in now look at in the EU, and then if we press search, we see that there are two papers resulting. One is about evaluating the implementation of Article 7 of the Energy Efficiency Directive. And then the knowledge base, of course, also give, at least for the publicly available documents, also the reference and then the text of the original paper. So people will be able to find quickly their way in the knowledge base. Then users that want to go into more specific evaluation guidance can use the green button. The green button goes into specific evaluation guidance. And they have the possibility there to define the type of policy, to define the sector they are looking at, and to define the type of method that they are contemplating. So let me give an example. We will look into a market-based instrument. We are going to look into the residential area. And because in the residential area, we select the method of deemed savings. And then we see that by this combination, there is one PSMC resulting. You see number 28, evaluating energy savings from energy efficiency obligation schemes in the residential sector using deemed savings. So if an evaluator is interested in this specific combination, this guideline that we can see if we click on it can be of use for this particular user. And then it goes into finally a PDF document where this guideline is fully available, but it also gives the possibility to look at the different elements of the guidelines. So the guidelines, all the PSMCs, they have the same division in the use of the tool. So it describes how the tool will be used, the scope of the tool, what are the limitations, the evaluation requirements in terms, for example, of data collection, the application for calculation of savings, what input and output can be expected, what kind of alternative method could be available for the chosen method. For example, is the chosen method is an engineering estimate, which may be a more elaborate and expensive method. Is there an alternative, for example, by deemed savings? Additional evaluation results that may be available. We also try to include some concrete examples for the different guidelines, which is in section 8. And in fact, in section 9, there are some references for further reading. So if we go to the first section of the tool, it lists the primary audience for this guide. It is about it's about the national level for this tool. It summarizes the objective of the guide, so to give information, to give guidance about specifying the evaluation objectives, the methodological choices, the inputs, the outputs, the background, so relative examples. So it gives the limitations and possibilities of the tool. It also includes references. For example, it says if the users and people that are interested in this specific guidelines wants to find a little bit more on evaluation principles and methods, there is a link to the general section that we discussed earlier and leads them to the document where they can find the general principles of evaluation to check, for example, whether this specific guideline is suitable in their situation. In the scope of the tool, in this case, we're talking about energy efficiency obligation schemes. So it is summarized what are those schemes exactly. It says it is a type of market-based instruments, and they are regulatory mechanisms setting energy efficiency targets. Here again, there is reference to the knowledge base. There is also reference to MUR database, the Odyssey MUR database that also contains relevant information concerning energy efficiency obligations. Oh, sorry. Now we are back. Section 3 contains the evaluation goals and ambitions. So it gives the general types of criteria, the level of ambition, and the further remarks here. It also gives some information on the time frame for evaluation that is important. Then in section 4, the general principles and methodological choices are explained for this method. Again, there is a link to the general reports and to other relevant references. There is also some remark from the matching method with earlier ex-ante evaluation. That's also important in a lot of guidelines, that the ex-post evaluation in ideal case should be linked with an ex-ante evaluation that has been made before, because then there is maybe already a method that is in use, or there is some experience with a specific method. So this is also discussed in this section. In energy efficiency evaluation, the selection of baselines is of course important. Is the difference between the situation including the implementation of energy saving actions and the reference situations without those saving actions. So the definition of the reference level. Also, there is further background given here about the selection of the baseline in the different cases. Another element is for example normalization factors. Normalization factors are sometimes relevant, for example, weather conditions, to take into consideration. Adjustment factors is another element that is considered in the guideline, and adjustment factors define which part of the calculated energy savings can be attributed to specific policy measures or meets the definition of savings specified in the evaluation objectives. Also there we have made a reference document which goes into more detail about those adjustment factors and make, for example, the difference between gross savings and net savings. And here this calculation of gross and net savings is also defined for this guideline. In section 5, the input and output is defined. For example, the main data requirements and data sources that have to be used. So you see here the calculation subject, the data requirements that are needed, and the possible sources where this can be found, with also a reference given here. So in this table, a whole lot of information is given about the data requirements and the sources of for those data. In section 6, we can find alternative for the chosen method. So, for example, energy efficiency obligation schemes is said often make use of different types of calculation methods. So deemed savings is often used, but also engineering calculations, for example, if it is about large or specific energy saving projects, is often also available as method, or sometimes direct measurements may also be available. direct measurements or billing analysis is in the residential sector is also an often used method. Then there are some additional evaluation results which may be looked at, for example, calculating of avoided CO2 emissions. Some concrete examples are given for the energy efficiency obligation with links to the, for example, the case studies in the EPATEE project. So the case studies can be found independently in the knowledge base section, in the orange section of the toolbox, but are also mentioned in the specific guidelines. And finally, there are some examples of further reading. Let's go to a second example. In that case, we look at the fiscal method, which we would like to apply on all sectors, kind of general, and we are interested in an econometric or it's not the yes, I was looking for this one. It is on the taxation for energy efficiency in end-use sectors using specific econometric method, which is regression analysis. So also in this case, the tool, the guideline is divided in the 9 different sections. Again, the use of the tool with the objective, with the focus, the scope, it delves into the measure of fiscal and taxation. So there is also a reference here which can be consulted on this. It discusses also the regression analysis method which is used here. So what exactly is it? About the end-use sectors that are considered here with the reference. And it says, yeah, this tool is applicable to, can be applied to all end-use sectors, but can also be applied to specific parts of end-use under taxation. So it is applicable on a very wide scope of sectors, but can also be used to one individual sector. The evaluation requirements are also summarized in this table. So the general types of criteria, the level of ambition for this tool. So it says, for example, that the calculation of energy savings to a specific policy measure provides due to taxes accounting for all other influencing quantities, that the cost effectiveness of the saving action is not a focus of the method. And that the let's say, calculation, for example, of CO2 emission reduction attributed to the policy measure is possible, and then should be included, of course, in the regression method. So this section delves into the calculations of energy savings with this regression method. It also discusses the use of this method together in combination with a possible ex-ante evaluation, to compare it with a possible ex-ante evaluation. It discusses again the baseline and the normalization factors, adjustment factors, the gross and net savings, and in section 5, the data requirements are mentioned and the possible sources of data. So for this method, a lot of statistical information from national or European statistical offices will be needed. And in this section, alternative for the regression analysis is also mentioned. In this case, is an elasticity method. It's also an econometric method, of course, and it's further explained how to do that. And finally, also here is reference to some other documents that can be used with regard to the regression analysis method. And finally, there are some elements of further reading. And of course, users can, if they want, they can have the whole document as PDF and print them for their own use. Okay, I think I will go to one more example. I would like now to go to an example in not in the residential sector, but in let's say the industry sector. And let's look at the voluntary agreement and an engineering estimate, because in an industrial environment, engineering estimates are usually available, so that is maybe a good method. And indeed we find another combination, another PSMC for this particular combination of a government subsidy, so a financial instrument, in combination with a voluntary agreement, using the engineering estimate method. This is a method, this is a setup that often has been used in the Netherlands. So a number of stakeholders, usually headed by a Ministry of Economic Affairs, for example, comes together. They defined an energy efficiency program for the next 5 years. They define energy efficiency, energy savings targets. The government puts aside a subsidy to basically to promote this this policy measure and to promote this energy savings. And that is again then further defined in this PSMC, in this guideline, again with the use of the tool, with the scope of the tool, So it's said here that this policy measure of a government subsidy with a voluntary agreement is often taken up by a government ministry, then sometimes a kind of process facilitator is hired in by the government to lead this whole process with a duration of typically 3 to 5 years, starting with a kind of ambition level of, let's say, 10% savings in 2030 for the industry, and defining measures and actions to achieve this as well. So in this guideline, the sector is described, the industry sector is described, the different methods are explained. The main method here is the engineering method. So here the time frame is mentioned for this method is typically a period of a number of years. Oh. The method of calculation of savings is summarized here. It's based on a kind of mathematical representation of a particular system. You can think of the industry as, let's say, basically the industry which is involved in continuous processes, for example, the refinery industry or the dairy industry. There's large installations that have a lot of simulation tools on their site, so the engineering method is often available already on site of those companies. It will be able to use those systems for defining and also calculating energy use and energy savings. Here the scope of the data, the limitations and the scope of data requirements and data sources is important. For example, the plant information system would in this case be a relevant source of data information. And of course, companies should also be willing to share this plant information data for this particular voluntary agreement. So it means that at the start of such a cooperation, a very good agreement should be taken in place, also covering perhaps confidential information to make sure that that companies are also willing to participate. So here also alternative method is indicated for the engineering estimate method, in this case deemed savings, which is more simple but also less accurate. So it's also a matter of available budget and to use this method, yes or no. Additional evaluation results can be, for example, avoided CO2 emissions, which is of course relevant in for example, in terms of climate agreements. But also cost effectiveness is sometimes important. So in the end, the participants or the government wants to know if we are going to subsidize this voluntary agreement resulting in 10% energy savings in 5 years. How much subsidy is then given and how much energy savings did we achieve? What is the cost effectiveness of this? So also here we find references to delve into this. And finally, there are some concrete examples for further reading. In this case, it's a reference in the Dutch language. And also some further reading is also presented here. This is some, let's say, some examples of different PSMCs. Finally, I want to show you briefly another approach which may reach the same result. So instead of going to the, let's say, green window, we can also use the wizard. And the wizard gives two options. First of all, there is a kind of overview of the different methodologies, about the different evaluation methodologies with the characteristics of the method. So those are, let's say, the evaluation method based on calculation of energy efficiency, the different characteristics of this method, the required input data, and then users may find already the kind of method that is most close to what they, in their situation, is applicable. So that is, I think, a useful table for users to consult. And then it gives them a possibility through this wizard to go into finding, again, ultimately, the combination of policy measures, sector and calculation methods. So they can make a choice of different elements here. So they could select a legislative, then they can select a certain sector. As you see, the wizard is also still work in progress because some sectors don't have yet reference, so we are still filling up this wizard method. But for residential, there are some possibilities, and we see that the sector of residential with normative legislation policies gives two possibilities for methods: the measurement method, which leads to the PSMC combination 1, or the deemed savings. So this wizard gives also a tool to users, an alternative tool to reach the combination that is most close to their specific problem. Looking at the time, we are now at 12:15, and I think I would like to close this part of the webinar. We still have, I think, some time for answering questions.
Thank you very much, Paul, for the presentation. We have indeed received already some questions.
Yes.
And I think the ones we have already received are of interest for all participants, especially the first one. Probably some of the participants have tried to visit the toolbox during your presentation. And so the first question is about the fact that it is still password protected. And so
yes,
how can participants access the toolbox?
Yes, participants, if they send an email to the EPATEE website, to the contact form, they can receive a password to be used. They can enter then the online toolbox. Apart from that, in a couple of weeks, we will add a number of further combinations, and then the toolbox will be publicly available, will be without a password. But if people want to have access to the toolbox in the next 2 weeks, they can request a password from the EPATEE website.
Thank you very much for the answer. The second question was about the differences between EPATEE and the MUR database and tools. What are the main differences, added value of the EPATEE Toolbox compared to the MUR database and tools?
I think the MUR database gives a very good description of the individual methods, of the individual sectors, but the MUR database does not so much combines the different measures with the sectors and the calculation methods. I think that is the strength of the EPATEE project, that we have made detailed analysis of all the possible combinations. In my presentation, I showed that there are 560 theoretical combinations, and we tried to extract from this 560 the 30 most relevant. So I think that is the added value of EPATEE in comparison to MUR. But MUR can very well be used in addition to the EPATEE Toolbox, because MUR in some specific topics gives a lot of information. And so I think the two databases, the EPATEE Toolbox and the MUR database, can be used together in concert. They add to each other.
Thank you very much, Paul. If I can add just a few words on that. Also, the objectives of the two projects and tools are not the same. So in the case of MUR, it is to provide information about the policies that are implemented. So obviously in EPATEE, we have only, for example, 23 case studies. So we are covering only a very small sample of the European policies. Whereas the MUR database is the most exhaustive database in terms of information about the energy efficiency policies implemented by the member states. So you can find more information about the results of the policies in the MUR database. However, the MUR database that does not provide guidance for policy officers, for example, to prepare evaluations. So the objective of the EPATEE Toolbox in particular is to support the development of evaluation, and hopefully this will provide more results than to be included in the MUR database. And there is a coordination, of course, between the two projects. Some partners are part of the two projects, and normally, for example, the case studies will be included as well in the MUR database. Okay. The next question, I also just a message to all participants. You can still ask questions. Feel free. We have already some questions on the line, but feel free to add others. We will have time for that. The next question is about additionality, and especially in the context of Article 7 of the EED. How to determine additionality of national policies in ex-post monitoring of Article 7 EED energy savings, and how to determine additionality of national policies compared to EU legislations, or more generally, how to deal with free riders.
Yeah, I think, but Jean-Sebastian can maybe add to that in a moment, that the EPATEE Toolbox does not delve extensively in all the issues around Article 7 of the EED, because at the start of the project we said the EED extension, the EED adaptation is such a detailed process. We will not make that kind of prime point of information in the EPATEE project. But Additionality as such is mentioned, is defined in the EPATEE project. You can find it in some of the general references about the calculation method, about the baseline, about additionality. So the information in EPATEE, in the EPATEE project about additionality can also be used in the context of Article 7, but we have not specifically addressed the issues around Article 7 in the EPATEE project as such, but indirectly the additionality elements in the EPATEE project can of course be used in the context of Article 7.
Okay, just to a few more words. As Paul said, when we started the EPATEE project, the new period of the EED was under negotiation, so the specific definition of additionality was not adopted yet, and the new definition of additionality in the amendment of the directive that was adopted in December last year is actually quite close to the general definition of net energy savings that we have in the toolbox. And as Paul showed earlier, maybe you can show it again, in the part of evaluation principles and methods, you have guidance for cross-cutting issues. And there is one about evaluating net energy savings. So you can find dedicated guidance about the issue of evaluating net energy savings that provide, let's say, the general methods you can use, also in the context of Article 7. Then that's clear that we do not provide more specific guidance related to Article 7 because that's up to the Commission to do so and not the role of EPATEE.
Indeed. Thanks.
Then there was a comment from one of your colleagues, Paul, to say that all 30 PSMCs have already been added to the wizards. So I don't know if you want to comment that.
Yes. The PSMCs have been added to the wizard. That's right. Yes. Yeah.
Also, another complementary information we can provide to the participants. When you presented the toolbox, you showed that some of the parts are still to be complemented, especially in the part about evaluation principles and methods, the section about process of evaluation. But if you are interested in this particular topic, you can go on the EPATEE website and you go in results, and in results you have a subsection named reports, and a new report has been added this week about the integration of evaluation into the policy cycle, and it includes part of the content that will be added to the toolbox later on. So if you want some early preview of this content, you can take this report. And anytime you can send us comments so that we can improve the content.
Yeah, and I would like to add, if attendance maybe tomorrow gets another idea about the toolbox or about the suggestion, do not hesitate to send us an email. We will be happy to look at your comments and suggestions, because the toolbox is still in the process of being finalized, so it's not yet coined in marble, as they say.
Okay, I think there is no other question for the moment. You can still ask question. So maybe I can take advantage of this to. There is another question. Perfect. When will there be more information on the European Learning Workshop of the 13th of June? I think usually we make the announcement and provide the registration link and everything 2 months before the workshop. So it means the information should be available about mid-April also. But anyway,
Yes.
I would encourage you to subscribe to the EPATEE newsletter, and then you will get the information as soon as it's available. You will be informed when the registration link and so on, agenda and so on is available. Another question. Thanks to the participants for asking questions. Do you have good examples of where digitalizations has enabled new evaluation techniques? For example, cheaper monitoring and verification?
That's a very good question. We have not yet seen concrete examples of digitization, but I think developments in, for example, in the residential area with smart metering, a lot of people have already smart meters in their home to analyze their electricity and gas consumption. So I think with other smart meters infiltrating in the different sectors, this will be a more and more important subject and can lead indeed to more cheaper methods because everything or a lot of data will be digitized. It's maybe also a matter of availability of those data because there is also confidential or owner's issue, and who is owner of all those data, that's also an important element. Maybe energy service companies could have an important role in this area. So it's also an area that is still in exploration and still in development, but it's certainly a very important element that can have a lot of influence in the coming years. Good question.
And as a complement, I can confirm that in the case studies that we've done, we have not found any evaluation that made use of smart meter data, for example. So we don't have such examples in Europe, I would say, except maybe for programs that were about the effect of smart meters on energy consumption related to energy behaviors and so on. And so far we have not covered evaluation of behavioral measures. The use of smart meters, that's something that has been already developed in the US, where utilities are much more involved in the energy efficiency programs and their evaluation. So it also make easier for them to use smart meter data as they can access directly their data. There was a discussion about this during the last workshop in Rome. If you check the presentation made by the British Ministry about the National Energy Efficiency Data Framework, NEED, the speakers say that they are currently investigating the possibility to use smart meter data, but it is not the case for the moment. That's still a topic of research. But in terms of digitalization, you can also think about using large databases, etc. So not only smart meter data. And about that, I would encourage you to look at the previous webinar, where there were two presentations, one from UK and one from the Netherlands, about the use of large databases of energy consumption in the residential sector to compare with the data from energy performance certificates. So it's clearly a topic under development, and we should see more and more evaluation studies using that. And also in the case studies, what we have seen is that several countries have developed online platforms to collect data, either, for example, if you think in Finland, they have an online platform to collect the data from the participants to the voluntary agreement. Also, you have several other schemes where they have developed. So that's another way where digitalization is also helping to improve the effectiveness of monitoring and evaluation.
Thanks for this addition.
You're welcome. So we reach 12:30. There is no other question for the moment. So the other information I was about to add before the last question is that within EPATEE there is also a task named direct support, where we can bring additional support bilaterally to member states. So in case you are interested, please contact Gregor Tenius, the coordinator of the project. There are many options for this direct support. It's mainly meant for public bodies, so public authorities or public agencies. And if you are interested in the project and in evaluation issues and so on, please feel free to contact Gregor to see what we can arrange to provide you with additional support. I see no other question. I don't know, Paul, if you have something to add or a concluding remark.
No, I would like to invite the attendants of the webinar also to visit our website on a regular basis, because I said that the online toolbox is work in progress and we aim to finalize it, bring it to a final format around June 1. So then you can find much more combinations that have been discussed today. And I hope that then the online toolbox can also serve actual needs in the evaluation community, energy efficiency evaluation community, and will help to basically to support this ex post evaluation on a more structured basis. So thank you for attending.
Thank you very much, Paul, and thank you very much to all participants and for the questions and your interest in the project. And we hope to see you in the next EPATEE activities. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.